Good evening, everybody. The Republican National Convention is moving into its second night, and judging by what I believe to be the best opening convention night by either party since 1976, certainly, this should be another polished, engaging, uplifting performance for the party and the Republican National Convention, using the first night of speeches to deliver a strong message of hope and a powerful expression of what it means to be an American. Just listen now to how the convention is already drawing sharp contrast with the left's hate-filled efforts to scare Americans into voting for the hapless Democratic nominee.
Donald Trump has divided our country, diminished our greatness.
You can achieve your American dream. You can be that shining example to the world.
The current president has cloaked American darkness for much too long. Too much anger, too much fear, too much division.
The American story was written by people just like you and I, who love our country and take risks to build a future for our families and neighbors.
We're talking about abolishing the police. We're talking about abolishing ICE. We're talking about abolishing prisons.
The left wants to defund the police. This is personal to me. I wouldn't be here without the bravery and heroism of the men and women in law enforcement who saved my life.
If you think things cannot possibly get worse, trust me, they can and they will if we don't make a change in this election.
We will be stronger than ever because when we put our mind to it, there is no obstacle that America can't surmount.
This administration has shown it will tear our democracy down if that's what it takes for them to win.
Our family went from cotton to Congress in one lifetime. And that's why I believe the next American century can be better than the last.
Encouraging, uplifting words from Republicans. They also made a point to challenge the Radical Dems' decades of deprivation of their black American constituents. Multiple speakers, including Democratic Georgia state lawmaker Vernon Jones, touting President Trump's record on criminal justice reform, on historically low unemployment rates in black communities.
The Democratic Party does not want black people to leave their mental plantation. We've been forced to be there for decades and generations. But I have news for Joe Biden. We are free. We are free people with free minds. And I'm part of a large and growing segment of the black community who are independent thinkers, and we believe that Donald Trump is the president that America needs to lead us forward.
Messages like that of Vernon Jones have clearly worried the power-hungry radical Dems. A handful of so-called progressive groups are now urging the left-wing national media to tape delay the convention so the precious little lefties could fact-check the speakers. These groups and the rest of the radical left once again trying to suppress the free speech of Republicans and conservatives. The left's radical far-left ideas are too fragile to be challenged. Listen to Maximo Alvarez, a Cuban immigrant. He's seen firsthand how the radical left suppresses free thought, free expression, and how their policies could destroy a nation. He's now a business owner in Florida, living the American dream. And last night, he delivered this passionate speech against the Marxist and socialist ideals advocated by the radical left in America.
I have seen people like this before. I've seen movements like this before. I've seen ideas like this before. And I am here to tell you, we cannot let them take over our country. I heard the promises of Fidel Castro, and I can never forget all those who grew up around me, who look like me, who suffered and starved and died because they believed those empty promises. They swallow the communist poison pill.
Tonight, the Republican convention will focus on law and order. Former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi and Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron among the night's speakers, while the radical Dems ignored completely the violence that has consumed Democrat-run cities across the country for months. Republicans are putting it forward front and center with solutions. Mark and Patricia McCloskey, who were charged.
They're not content with marching in the streets. They want to walk the halls of Congress. They want to take over. They want power. This is Joe Biden's party. These are the people who will be in charge of your future and the future of your children.
Make no mistake, no matter where you live, your family will not be safe in the radical Democrats' America.
Their warning is a victim of the mob violence in Kenosha. He's run a family business. Carpenter. He's the manager of the B&L office furniture in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Scott, I am awfully sorry for what you and your family have gone through, what you've lost, and I appreciate your taking the time to share your story with our audience. Your thoughts as you watched your store burning.
It was very sad. I was sitting at the table watching it live through somebody's Facebook feed. And
neighboring businesses and the community of Kenosha. This is who was do this? Are these just simply demonstrators? A community frustrated in Kenosha who've just lost all control? Who are the people doing this?
You know, I don't know exactly who did it or what group actually is creating the destruction. We do know, we believe that there are a lot of people coming in from neighboring cities, states, helping provoke this. I've heard that people have come as far as Portland, Oregon to be involved in this demonstration to help get things started. I don't believe it's the actual people who want to do the protesting that's doing this destruction. I think these are the people that are just opportunists and want to destroy people's property and be destructive. They just want to destroy. It's just hatefulness. It's just hateful.
It's hatefulness, and yet the Black Lives Matter activists, Antifa, say they're standing up for a different principle. They're standing up for a different America. And the police in your city, are they simply overwhelmed with this? They can't stop this?
They're standing down. They're letting it happen. Last night, as I was sitting at the table watching it unfold in front of me before the building caught on fire, an officer came on the scanner and said, people are running around our barricades. What are we to do? And they said, we're to do nothing. We're doing nothing. We're going to just stand and watch. So they did absolutely nothing and stood and watched.
Your mayor is a Democrat. Your city council, Democrat as well?
I believe so, the majority, yes.
And how does the community, I mean, this community, Kenosha has a wonderful history. It is a heterogeneous community, a diverse community. Would you have ever expected a moment like this?
Never. You know, we've been here for over 31 years in this location at this building, and when people find out the neighborhood we're in, they're like, oh, that's a rough neighborhood, and we're like, not really. Maybe behind the storm major to happen. I have to admittedly say there's been times where I've actually walked away from our delivery truck, gone home for the night, and left it unlocked, come back to not a problem. So, you know, it's unexpected in this town. That's why we didn't take measures to buy 500 sheets of plywood to wrap around the entire building to try to protect it. Although I believe if they wanted to set fire to it, they would have just set fire to that wood. They were just out to destroy. They don't care. They didn't care one bit.
They don't. And what has been the reaction of your neighbors and those in that part of town where you do business? Have you had a lot of expressions of sympathy? What has been the reaction?
Yeah, we've had a lot of expressions of sympathy. I've had customers stop by, and knowing that guessing we'd probably be here, where else would I be at this time of day at my business, coming by and saying how sorry, they are, and if there's anything they can do to help, or can they help clean up? And we're like, there's nothing to clean up. This has to be bulldozed and piled up and hauled out. The neighbors around us, I feel bad for them and their businesses that have been devastated from these thugs, Yeah, not good.
And, well, you've also been devastated by a mayor and a city council that told the police department to stand down. How does that make you feel, and why in the world would you put up with it? Why would anyone in Kenosha, Wisconsin accept that as a bottom line to city government and what you can expect of it in an emergency?
Right. Yeah, I agree. You know what? Is that the way it is? Some big, tough people come in and say they want to tear the town down. We're just going to stand back and watch and say, oh, we're sorry. Let's just clean up and move forward. I don't think.
Yeah, well, that's very disappointing. We, again, are sorry for what you're going through and what the city of Kenosha is going through. It is, unfortunately, it's a story that's being played out across many cities in this country, night after night after night over the past, ever since the killing of George Floyd. Black Lives Matter, but apparently it's a question of how much. Scott Carpenter, thank you so much. We appreciate it, and we wish you and Kenosha all the very best. Up next, the radical Dems pushing mail-in voting. Why not? But that effort isn't sitting well with their key constituencies. We take it up, and we're pleased to announce right here on this program that along with the Trump century, How Our President Changed the Course of History Forever, it's available for pre-order now. We've officially launched our merchandise store, Lou Dobbs Shop. Head over to loudobbsshop.com. Send a message to all the liberals every single day. With the special promo code of MAGA, you'll receive 15% off your first order. We're coming right back. Another record-breaking day on Wall Street. The Nasdaq hitting a new record high, up 87 points on the day. The S&P also hitting a new record close, up 12 points. The Dow down 60. Volume on the big board, 3.6 billion shares. And crude oil above $43, $43.37 a barrel. Listen to my reports 3 times a day, coast to coast on the Salem Radio Network. Breaking news now, night one of the Republican convention already making waves among some Democratic voters. Here's a lifelong Democrat talking about why he is now supporting the Republican Party.
I'm a lifelong Democrat. I'm from Lorain, Ohio, which is a Democrat city in Ohio. And I just want to say, after watching the convention tonight on TV, on C-SPAN here, I am definitely changing my vote to Republican.
What was it that convinced you about tonight?
It was the heartfelt way they came across to the American people, and I was really touched by the number of times they used the word God. They put God into everything, and the people on the Democratic side on their convention act like they were pushing God right out of it.
And the radical left keeps promoting mail-in voting. But it turns out Black and Latino voters are skeptical about that idea. A number of focus groups revealing that discovery. They found that, quote, voters prefer going to the polls because the experience has been ingrained. They feel secure their vote will be counted. This is especially true among African Americans. A recent poll also finding 65% of Black and Latino voters want to vote in person because they believe their vote is more likely to be counted. And history proves it so. More than 534,000 mail-in ballots, by the way, were rejected in this year's primaries. There have also been 20 arrests and convictions for voter fraud so far this year. And the Democratic response is, what voter fraud? Joining us tonight, former Reagan White House political director, Fox Business political analyst, Ed Rollins, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist for the New York Post, Fox Business contributor, Michael Goodwin. Let's start with you, Ed. I thought it was the best convention since the first one I saw was 1976. This, to me, was the best opening of any convention of either party I've seen. Your thoughts?
I sent a letter to the campaign manager last night at the end of it saying I've been to 10 of these things, including a couple that I commented at Democrats. There's never been a better one. This opening was fabulous. They had to throw this thing together quickly. It's what conventions are now, are big television shows. It was a superb show. I intended on kind of watching it periodically, reading newspapers and what have you. I watched it from the beginning to the end and applauded every single person that was up there. I think it was a fabulous show, and I expect them to have a better show even tonight as we move forward. All done in a very short time, too.
Michael.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was really upbeat, and I think that was an important distinction between the Democrats. I thought it had a lot of high energy, moved quickly. There are a couple of speeches that maybe went on a minute or so too long, but generally they were well timed, well delivered, well prepared. I thought that, having some people other than just the speaker on the stage at sometimes with the president and other times, I thought it gave it more of a quality of a real convention rather than just a canned television show. So I thought all in all, and I thought it was actually quite substantive in its presentation of policies on the way it dealt with the COVID issue, trying to defend the president on that, and especially, as I write in my column, regarding the search for black voters. I thought the presentations last night featured some very strong presentations by black speakers.
Equally as important, Lou,
Herschel Walker. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was a little worried about the president being overexposed. The president was superb. And I think the idea of having him in there interfacing with people, telling the things that he does, like rescue hostages and sitting down with those first responders, was just absolutely fabulous.
Congressman Jim Jordan and the personal stories that he told and shared about the president, compelling. Maximo Alvarez telling his story from the Cuban American. It was quite a splendid night of wonderful stories about America. I have to tell you, it was there were a lot of points where you could easily tear up a bit, choke up a bit. Because we had fresh faces with fresh perspectives, and you mentioned black voters, the appeal, obviously, that was intended in the evening. I have to tell you, I thought it was compelling, and there's no wonder that President Trump, Mike, is gaining such a large percentage of African-American voters in this election year.
Well, I thought, you mentioned Herschel Walker, which was incredibly powerful, his personal relationship with the president. As he said, 37 years. He said, and I know racism, it's not Donald Trump. But the others speaking politically, Vernon Jones from the Georgia legislature, a Democrat, lifelong Democrat, and of course Tim Scott's speech was terrific. So you had a combination of personal stories and policy-oriented speeches as well. And so I think it was well-rounded in that sense. It wasn't just one theme. There were multiple themes throughout the evening.
Absolutely. Ed, you get the last word.
I've been with Herschel, had dinner with him several months ago. He loves Donald Trump, and he told me many of those stories of the personal friendship that they've had for a very, very long time. So it was not scripted. It was basically him from his heart, one of the greatest players of all time.
Absolutely, and it's going to be interesting to see how this evening goes. We're going to find out here shortly. Ed Rollins, Michael Goodwin, always great to talk with you and have you here. Up next, the radical Dems in disarray. They can't find a way to unify around their party platform. We take that up with Trump campaign press secretary Hogan Gidley after these quick messages. Stay with us. We'll be right back. The radical Dems desperately trying to portray themselves as united, but it turns out there's considerable discord. Nearly a quarter of the delegates at last week's Democratic National Convention voted against the Democratic Party's platform. The party releasing the vote totals after pressure from Bernie Sanders supporters. The Trump campaign responded with this statement saying, quote, Biden has already embraced socialism, and it's still not enough for the left-wing extremists in his party. This week, Americans will witness a unified Republican Party standing alongside President Trump's America First agenda. And viewership for the first night of the RNC was down 29% compared to 2016, 16 million watched compared to 22.5 million 4 years ago, and the first night of the DNC down 27% compared to 2016. Well, joining us now, Hogan Gidley, National Press Secretary for the Trump 2020 campaign, former Principal Deputy White House Press Secretary. First, Hogan, great to have you with us. This is, as I said, as Ed and Michael agreed, we watched the best opening night of any convention that any of us had ever seen by either party. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I absolutely agree, Lou. Thanks so much for having me on. I mean, the Democrats spent 4 days trying to tell the American people that this country is inherently evil and that it's the cause of the world's problems. That is a flat-out lie. In one day, we changed the narrative here on our side and explained the truth, that this is the greatest idea ever realized. This country, our America, is a beacon of hope. It is a beacon of greatness, of strength, of compassion across this planet. And I have to tell you, when I saw some of the reviews come in and I watched what I saw those 4 days with those Democrats and their doom and gloom and their embrace of radical ideologies like socialism, there is no way the American people are going to buy what they are selling.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, and I think that the American people are watching a party, particularly last night, in its appeal to minority voters, particularly African Americans, Hispanics in this country. I thought it was a compelling appeal. Vernon Jones, Herschel Walker, you had Maximo Alvarez. Those are some of the most compelling stories by just wonderful people. It was just a great thing to have instead of the, if you'll forgive me, the sort of predictable political figures who attend these conventions and dominate them. It was wonderful to see Americans dominating.
Absolutely, and because we do dominate. This country is great. I'm so sick and tired of the Democrats trying to say it is not. And Max Alvarez was one of the greatest speakers, as you just brought up. When he looked to the camera and you saw tears coming up in his eyes, and he said, hey, I listened to the Democrat convention. I've heard those policies before. I've heard that agenda before. I fled that communist agenda. I left Cuba. I will not go back. We cannot go in the direction of the failed policies of socialist nations, of communist nations. That, to me, was one of the most impactful, because this is someone who experienced how horrible a communist regime actually is. And he said, I'm hearing the exact same language coming from the Democrats. That is, quite frankly, scary. It is ominous, because that's what the Democrats are trying to sell as our future. We cannot go to socialism. Our convention kicked off, and we're talking about the greatness of this country. It is the land of promise. It is the land of opportunity. It most certainly is the land of heroes. And this president has taken us to record-setting highs in record-setting time. And if we get 4 more years, we're going to be back to a level that has never been seen before. Right. He is so focused on making sure the lives of all Americans, regardless of race, religion, color, or creed, are improved. And you saw it in the first term. A second term will bring more of that peace and more of that prosperity.
The president said he was going to be president of all Americans, and he's proved it once. He's going to have to prove it again, and he's also proved he's the man to do just that. Hogan, tonight, Melania Trump headlining the headliners in the convention. Your thoughts about the importance of what she will be saying? Give us your thoughts.
Well, she has been an incredible First Lady. I've gotten to know her in my time in the White House. I can't wait to hear what she has to say. And obviously, she knows the president really well, being married to him. And so it's always good for First Ladies to talk about their spouses and talk about this president in a way that not just humanizes him, but shows how he is as a husband, shows how he is as a father, and reminds everybody how strong he has been as a leader. It's going to be a great night tonight, and there are going to be a few surprises. So make sure you have your popcorn ready for later on.
Always, always. Hogan Gidley, good to have you with us. Thanks so much. Coming up next, the latest on those U.S. trade talks with China. Yes, there has been something of a shift here. We don't know precisely what it is, and we don't know whether the Chinese Communist Party will ever live up to its promises. Dr. Michael Pillsbury joins us here in just a few moments to assess the relationship and the Communist Chinese threat. And a reminder, my new book, The Trump Century, How Our President Changed the Course of History Forever, is available for pre-order. Your copies at my new website, LouDobbsShop.com, as well as Amazon.com. We encourage you to visit both. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Breaking news, Treasury Secretary Mnuchin and Trade Representative Lighthizer talked yesterday with Chinese Vice Premier Liu. On the Phase 1 trade deal, Mnuchin and Lighthizer say, quote, both sides see progress. I could go farther with what they said, but that doesn't add up to much, so we'll take it with progress. Joining us now is Michael Pillsbury, who is the head of the China Institute at the Hudson Institute. It's good to have you with us, and let's kind of figure out what's going on here. We're running over $100 billion deficit with China in the first 6 months of the year. If that were to be doubled over, it'd be an improvement on the previous year, but not what we were looking for. What's going on?
Well, that's right, Lou. And as you recall, there's a mandatory 6-month review after the deal was signed. But the president has pointed out that the virus and the death of the Americans and our economy has eclipsed the trade deal. So this seems to be a success. The Chinese are still making purchases. They haven't walked out. They haven't violated rules. But the president has really changed his mind.
They've just killed 175,000 Americans, as you alluded to. I mean, I'm talking about the fact they haven't kept their deals. They continue to disrupt the United States at every turn. This is an all-out. This is a war. This is no longer a Cold War. We have been attacked by President Xi Jinping. It's that straightforward. There's no pussyfooting around this. There is no sugarcoating it. That's what it is. Am I wrong?
No, there's no sugarcoating it. In fact, I would call it a kind of economic warfare, that their economy seems to be improving much faster than ours. This is really deadly for us, Lou, because the various forecasts now show that China will be the only country to grow this year in 2020. They're recovering so fast. As you remember, they protected their own people while they exported the virus. So this is going to cause damage not just to the American economy, but globally.
Yeah, but you know, this is now we're well into this. We're in August, and we are 7 months from the first discovery of what was going on. There has to be a response and a reaction. This is not something that can be finessed. It is not something that can be ignored. Although I cannot imagine the national left-wing media doing a better job of what their masters tell them. They're ignoring those realities. Wall Street is ignoring it. We're looking at the prospect of perhaps a record IPO on the New York Exchange. We're watching madness here, and we have to have a response and a path forward. It hasn't been articulated yet.
What the president has told me, Lou, is that there's more to come on China. He wants a very calibrated response that holds them accountable. There's a lot of ideas coming out of the Senate about what can be done, a range of things to punish the Chinese and hold them
This will be
accountable.
the first time the United States Senate under Donald Trump in his presidency has come up with anything worthwhile in national security policy. Can you name another bright idea that has come from them? This has been the Mitch McConnell Senate, and it is a pathetic nest of rhinos.
No, the senators I'm talking about are not rhinos, Lou. They're the conservatives who have quite a bit of legislation. One is to allow Americans to sue the Chinese for their dead relatives. There's at least 25 pieces of legislation to hold China accountable. Mitch McConnell's not backed in.
No one knows better than you, Mike, no one knows better than you how hollow those words sound when we're talking about so many dead, so many infected around the world. We're talking over 50 million people infected, and we're supposed to watch their fishing fleet take over the Galapagos without response. It's been weeks now, and there hasn't been a response. Who in the world is the United States right now? Because this is not the proper response by the world's only superpower. It is, to me, deeply, deeply disturbing.
If you pardon my being a little partisan for a second, Lou, I think the Democrats used to be supporting President Trump on China. The closer we get to the election, the more silent the Democrats have begun. They've not been, you'd think they would raise the Galapagos Islands just for the violation of one of the world's best eco-preserves. But instead, we have this remarkable silence from the Democrats, as though they're hoping that President Trump will not get credit for the successes he's had already on China.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason that I call Joe Biden China Joe on this broadcast. Dr. Michael Pillsbury, always good to have you here. Thanks so much. Up next, is John Brennan a target of John Durham's investigation, or is he not? We take it up with the Just the News founder, John Solomon. Stay with us. We're coming right back. Much more ahead. As Pillsbury and I were discussing, China is becoming more and more aggressive with its fishing fleet. A new report by the environmental think tank, the Overseas Development Institute, says China's distance water fishing fleet is made up of 17,000 fishing vessels. To put that in perspective, as you see there, we have 225. And by the way, we haven't done a darn thing about what is happening in the Galapagos, surrounded by some 360 of those vessels. Former FBI Director James Comey endorses Joe Biden in the Washington Post. Wow. He writes in part, quote, "The facts and the law, not loyalty to Trump or wealth or race, must be the only things that matters." Uh-oh, he's in trouble. And no matter, get the play? No matter our politics, we should see it the same way. In March, Biden's campaign rejected Comey's endorsement, asking if they could return it free of charge. Well, House Intelligence Committee ranking member Devin Nunes says Obama-era CIA Director John Brennan is not in the clear in John Durham's Obamagate investigation. Brennan claims Durham told him during his 8-hour interview last Friday he wasn't a target. Nunes says that is not true until Durham publicly says so. Joining us now, Just the News editor-in-chief John Solomon, author of the important book, Fallout, Nuclear Bribes, Russian Spies, and Washington Lies that enriched the Clinton and Biden dynasties and are still doing, I suspect. John, great to have you with us. Let's start out with John Brennan. Is he or is he not in the clear? Is he or is he not a target? And why is everybody playing games?
What I know is that the moment he walked into the interview, that moment he set foot for the first 8 hours, he was told, you can ask your status at any moment. He was told he was neither a target nor a subject. That can change very quickly. If you say something in the interview that's not accurate, you can be looked at as a target for possible perjury or false statements. But at the moment he walked in, you're allowed to ask your status. He was given a status, which is you're here as a witness today. However, it is very unusual for the CIA director to spend 8 hours in the witness chair. It's also unusual for one of his conclusions that the Trump administration was the beneficiary of Russia's meddling to be investigated criminally by a prosecutor. It suggests that something John Durham is looking at doesn't sit well. They have some doubts. What I hear from sources, there are analysts who said they didn't agree with the conclusion. John Brennan has always portrayed the conclusion as unanimous. If there was dissent, there could be a criminal issue still ahead for everyone involved in that intelligence community assessment.
At the very least, we know that the radical Dems stole the 2018 midterm election through the lies of the House Chairman of Intelligence, Adam Schiff, through the lies of both Burr and Warner, the ranking member of the Senate Intelligence Committee, who had attempted contact with Russians. We also know there's a relationship to the intelligence agencies themselves, and it appears to be a coordination in the cover-up. Why in hell wouldn't there be a full-on investigation? And where, by the way, is Lindsey Graham? He promised a big origin of the investigation of the Obamagate scandal a year and a half ago. And he hasn't done a damn thing, has he?
There are very little. I mean, there's been a few moments where he's brought out things that we all kind of knew about, and he created a great moment in a hearing, but we haven't had the thorough investigation that he promised, and that's disappointing to a lot of people that I talk to. There are still documents out there. For instance, communications between McCabe and Comey that would let us know what they were thinking, whether Obama was putting pressure on them, that have still not been made public. Lindsey Graham could do a lot more between now and Election Day to help us understand what happened in the 2016 election before we finally vote in the 2020 election. Thus far, he hasn't done enough, according to the people that I talk to.
I want to turn to your article on Konstantin Kilimnik, who you report in Just the News had extensive contact with the Obama officials, and we learn that he was, in all probability, a Russian agent. This is stunning stuff. And
it is. Listen.
Give us your thoughts about its import and the relationship, if there is one, with the Obama White House.
After 3.5 years of hearing Donald Trump had a Russia spy problem, and he didn't, of course, we found out that wasn't true. It turns out the Democrats do have a Russia spy problem, if you believe the Senate Intelligence Committee report that came out last week, because it identified Konstantin Kilimnik, a business partner of Paul Manafort in Ukraine, as a Russian intelligence officer, an asset of a foreign power, hostile foreign power. He had countless contacts with the Obama State Department, particularly through the Ukraine embassy over many years. He was feeding them information. They treated him as a sensitive source, but they were also feeding him very sensitive information back. If he's a Russian spy, as the Senate Intelligence Committee alleges, there is a big problem. There needs to be a damage assessment at the State Department to see what we may have given him that might have hurt our security.
To this point, the State Department has been impervious to inquiry and demands, in fact, for answers. I don't know that we have time to discuss the possibility that we'll see a difference this time. We can hope. John Solomon, as always, thank you for your great reporting. Good to talk with you. Before we go to break, my new book, The Trump Century, How Our President Changed the Course of History Forever, available for pre-order. Get your copies at my new website, LouDobbsShop.com. It's a wonderful place, and you can go to Amazon.com as well. We encourage both. Stay with us. We'll be right back.